Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're tackling an absolute giant of American literature, but we're going to look at it through a lens that might completely shatter how you view it. We are uncovering how the classic text of Louisa May Alcott's Little Women was actually hiding a brilliant subversive rebellion. And honestly, what's even more wild, we'll see how modern editors just inadvertently erased it. We're jumping right in with a pretty massive question here. Did you actually read the real Little Women? Because the beloved 19th century domestic tale you think you know, it might not be the exact words Louisa May Alcott put on the page. If you picked up a paperback copy and say the late 20th century, you were almost certainly reading a text that had been subtly but fundamentally altered from its original publication. So to really get what was lost, we've got to look at how it all began. Picture this. It's 1868, Alcott is writing at her custom shelf desk in Orchard House. And her original text, it was a massive, radical departure from the standard wholesome tales of that time. The 1869 Roberts Brothers first edition didn't pull any punches. It immediately challenged the strict gender norms of the post-Civil War era. See, Alcott was heavily influenced by philosophies of self-reliance, plus her own gritty experiences earning wages to support her family. Because of that, she had absolutely zero interest in writing just another standard, safe domestic portress. And this gender subversion? It kicks off literally on page 1, starting right with the characters' names. Alcott intentionally flipped the gender script by giving her fierce, super-ambitious heroine, Josephine, a boyish nickname, Jo. And on the flip side, she gave her wealthy, male neighbor, Theodore, a soft, feminine pet name, Laurie. Now, that was no accident. Census records from 1860 actually show Laurie was primarily a girl's name back then. So they're like two halves of a whole, instantly breaking down the expectations of who they're supposed to be just based on what they're called. Now, the absolute brilliance of this subversion is hidden right in Laurie's backstory. When he first meets Jo, he confesses that he actually got into physical fights, like beat up other boys at school, because they teased him by calling him the feminine name Dora. But the wild irony here is that he thrashed those boys to stop the teasing, only to turn right around and replace Dora with Laurie, which is an equally feminine-sounding name. He took charge of his own identity, sure, but he totally kept that feminine coding. Alcott pushes this boundary even further through what they actually do and where they are. On one hand, you've got Jo. She desperately wants to fight in the Civil War with her dad. She's constantly looking for wage-earning work outside the house, and she speaks with all this rugged, street-level slang. And then there's Laurie. He is literally locked up in his grandfather's mansion, studying with a tutor, playing the piano, and totally sheltered from the real world. He's basically living the life of a traditional 19th century girl. So Jo's burning desire for some kind of masculine agency really comes to a head in one of the novel's most famous scenes. When the family needs money to bring their injured father home, Jo doesn't just sit around waiting for a male savior. Nope. She marches out, cuts off her hair, and sells it. Like she says, "I only sold what was my own." Now, obviously, this is a radical act of selflessness, but think about it. It also lets her metaphorically participate in the war. She undergoes this bodily sacrifice, kind of like a soldier's amputation, so she can be a self-reliant provider instead of just a passive waiting woman. But surviving in that era with that kind of fire, not exactly a walk in the park. It required constantly repressing your true feelings just to keep up appearances. And this intense societal pressure is perfectly nailed by the satirical narrator during the New Year's Eve party scene. Meg and Jo are stressing out over a single pair of stained gloves, and the narrator just dramatically cries out, "Let us be elegant or die." Seriously, they are suffering through pinching shoes and hairpins literally stabbing into their scalps just to look presentable. The pressure of society's constant watchful eyes was just immense. And the thing is, this pressure cooker of domesticity isn't just, uncomfortable. It can literally be fatal. We see this most profoundly with the character of Beth. Beth is the pure embodiment of the 19th century ideal woman. She's quiet, she's compliant, she stays at home, and she exists solely to serve others. But this ideal, it's completely tragic. Her ultimate death in the novel symbolizes the literal starvation and stunting of a woman's potential under those crushing domestic demands. It turns out the home wasn't always a safe fortress at all. Okay, but right here is where we hit a massive paradigm shift in this explainer. Because if we examine the text through the lens of diachronic linguistics, which, by the way, is just the study of how language changes over time, we uncover something pretty shocking. Jo's rebellious, slang-filled voice didn't just have to battle those 19th century domestic norms, she also had to fight against 20th century editors. A massive comparative study looked at Alcott's original 1869 first edition right alongside a really popular 1970 mass-market paperback edition, and researchers discovered that publishers had engaged in something called intralingual translation. What does that mean? Basically, they adapted the English text for a new modern English-speaking audience. They essentially decided to prioritize a smooth, easy reading experience over absolute fidelity to what Alcott actually wrote. And this perfectly illustrates the invisible, sanitizing hand of the editor. Let's look at the very first chapter. In the 1869 original, Jo is complaining about her hard life, and she says they grub hard enough. The word grub paints this incredibly vivid picture of weary, physical, dirty toil. But jump to 1970, the editors just changed it to work hard enough. They completely neutralized the evocative, gritty imagery of her hardship. And they were even more aggressive with her rebellious grammar. When Jo pushes back against being forced into this prim young lady persona, the 1869 text has her defiantly shouting, "I ain't." This working-class vernacular is a crucial marker of her active resistance, but incredibly, the 1970 edition swoops in and grammatically corrects this to, "I'm not." I mean, that entirely flattens the linguistic conflict Alcott intentionally built into the character. They polished up her speech, but it came at the direct expense of her gritty authenticity. Oh, and it wasn't just Jo. Sister Meg's complaints got the exact same softening treatment. Back in 1869, Meg describes the kids she works with as dreadful, which suggests a genuine heavy trial, like a real source of frustration. The 1970 text dials this way down to the much lighter word, tiresome. Tiresome just implies simple weariness, right? It makes her emotions seem less severe, way more conventionally acceptable, and honestly, a lot more aligned with 20th century expectations of feminine patience. And here's the kicker. This systemic sanitization didn't even stop at vocabulary. It bled right into the very punctuation of the novel. The 1970 editors went in and completely reshaped the narrative rhythm and the emotional delivery of the dialogue, just through punctuation modernization. A perfect example of this is when Jo is venting about having to stay home and knit instead of going off to fight in the war. In the 1869 text, she ends her speech with, "like a poky old woman," followed by a simple period. That period gives the line a sense of flat, resigned finality, right? Like a quiet sigh of introspective melancholy. But the 1970 editors, they swapped that period for an exclamation point. Suddenly, Jo's quiet resignation is transformed into this loud, theatrical outburst. The core words are exactly the same, but the entire emotional texture is completely flipped. Now, strangely enough, amidst all this modernization and grammatical correcting, the 1970 editors made a very specific choice with the character of Amy. They actually left her misspelled malapropism, vocabulary, completely intact. And this is so revealing because it proves the editors weren't just blindly fixing mistakes. No, they knew exactly how to distinguish between what they considered basic grammatical errors and deliberate, character-defining traits. They were carefully, deliberately curating the text. So the crucial point here is that this kind of conservative modernization might have made the book much easier and smoother for a kid in the 1970s to read, but it came at a massive cost. It stripped away the very roughness, the colloquial grit, and the distinct class markers that made Alcott's characters so groundbreaking in the first place. We essentially ended up with a 19th century text meticulously curated to fit 20th century sensibilities. Which leaves us with this final, really important thought. As we look at the incredible legacy of Little Women, we really have to ask ourselves, when publishers constantly polish and update the language of the past just for the reading comfort of the present, are we inadvertently rewriting our own history? Does accessibility ever really justify erasing a rebel's true voice? Think about that the next time you pick up a classic. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what's actually on the page.